Hey everybody, welcome to Monday's IndyCar on the 12th of August. Incidentally, my 58th birthday today, so happy birthday to me. Anyway, to business. Okay, two things for you today. The first one is the big stooshy that's going on over Wings Over Scotland's interview with Alex Salmond and the misrepresentation of Stuart Campbell's ideas for a third pro-independence party for Holyrood elections. So let's have a look at why it is that Stuart Campbell proposes a third party to help with winning seats. Now remember that at the moment the SNP is engaged fully in organising another referendum. Now this is, if you like, the best way of obtaining independence, the one which is most respected both here and abroad. So it is the prime directive at the moment for the SNP to gain independence by a lawful referendum carried out in accordance with electoral law in Scotland, supervised, if you like, by observers from outside of the UK if necessary, to ensure fairness and to ensure that there's no more rigging and no votes being illegally tampered with by the leader of a Scottish Tory party. So all of that is possible using a referendum, and that is what the SNP is working towards. However, if, as some argue, that a Section 30 order will never be granted and therefore a referendum won't happen, well, I don't think that is the case. I don't think, A, that the Section 30 order will ever be granted, but that doesn't stop you having a referendum. But anyway, the reasons why it's been suggested that there might be a third party are hypothetical. If we were to fight for independence in a general election in the UK, it would be simply a matter of winning the largest number of seats. So anything above 30 seats would be more than 50% of the seats, and therefore a mandate to declare independence. So that's simple enough. But if that doesn't happen, the next available weapon afterwards would be the next Holyrood elections, which aren't incidentally until 2021 anyway, so a long, long way off. Now, as you know, a general election in the UK would mean that anyone under the age of 18 in Scotland wouldn't be allowed to vote. So that's a disadvantage to fighting for independence through a general election in the British sense. Also, European Scots would not be allowed to vote in a British general election either, because of the way the British government is gerrymandering things with Brexit. So, two disadvantages to fighting for independence during using a British general election as the means. And then we come to this idea of a Holyrood election. Now you might think, great, a Holyrood election is entirely Scottish, everybody takes part, nobody can really boycott it because it is a general election. But there is a big problem. The D'Hondt system, which has been used to make sure that the makeup of the Scottish Parliament closely resembles is in proportion to the number of votes cast, means that half of the seats in Scotland, roughly, are fought for on the basis of first past the post. This is the largest party takes the seat arrangement, which we use in Westminster. In that case, most of those seats will go to the SNP because they have a huge support. Somewhere in the region of 50% of the people of Scotland will vote for the SNP in the first past the post part. And then comes the next bit, the so-called list votes. These are regional votes. These are like the consolation prize. These are used to try to balance the Parliament up and to prevent the SNP from ever gaining a complete control over the Scottish Parliament. In other words, stops them having a proper majority. What does it do? Well, the D'Hondt system looks at how the parties won seats in the first part of the election. In other words, the first past the post. So if you've won a lot of seats and you have a lot of votes, then what they do is they halve that number of votes and apply them to the next vote. And it's basically a system of arithmetical diminution, where they reduce the size of the biggest party's votes in each successive round, which means that the smaller and smaller parties get seats, but with fewer and fewer votes. Now the problem with it is that if the SNP has had an awful lot of votes in a particular area, then that lot of votes for that particular seat would be seen as needing to be halved by the default system because the SNP has already got the majority of seats from the first past the post. You see where I'm going? So the idea is to handicap the SNP by halving the number of votes cast so that the next largest party then gets the seat, and so on. And of course this is how the unionist parties win their seats. Very, very few unionist MSPs have won their seats outright in first past the post. So what Stuart Campbell has been suggesting, and what has been massively misrepresented in the Times, was the idea that a small party with only independence as its prime objective would stand in these areas where the SNP is certain to lose, where the SNP cannot win a single seat because of the huge number of votes they've had already. And by doing this, by having this pro-independence party that everybody knows is pro-independence, gives people who want independence another bite at the cherry. It means that they can fight for that seat against the unionist parties and stand a very good chance of winning the seat because they're voting for a different party, not the SNP, but the Independence Party, if you want to call it that. Now, this is what Stuart Campbell was suggesting, that a few candidates are picked from popular people in the Scottish independence movement to stand where the SNP cannot possibly win. And this would mean that there would be more seats won by pro-independence parties, and that would create a Holyrood Parliament with a massive majority for independence and can be used as a way of deciding independence. Because if you do it that way, you're likely to win a real large proportion of seats, a very big majority, something which cannot be denied afterwards. The reason why the voting system is the way it is at Holyrood was the union's attempt to shackle the SNP and to prevent them growing large enough to take Scotland out of the Union. And the only way that anybody can actually use that additional vote system successfully is to create a third party, and that small third party only fights for seats where the SNP cannot win and where they take the fight to the unionists who are in that particular region and wipe them out and take them out, so that we can reduce the number of unionist MSPs at the Westminster Parliament to the absolutely lowest level possible. It's a tactic which has not been tried, it's been talked about many times, it's hypothetical, it does not split the vote for independence in any way. The SNP wins all the seats in first past the post, and in the ones that it cannot win because of a high number of votes in the first round, that is the place where it would be the new third party that would stand in those seats only. So we're looking at a way of assisting the SNP and assisting the movement to get pro-independence MSPs elected only. And it is only hypothetical, and you would have to wait until all the other methods have been tried. I believe that the SNP is going to get their legislation through in time to declare a date for an independence referendum well before Brexit happens. Not necessarily have the vote before Brexit happens, but have it already planned. In other words, announced the date of the vote. That way the Tories cannot shut that vote down, because if they did that, they would be seen for what they would be, which is dictatorship. They're already verging on that as it is, which leads me to the next story. It's been reported in the unionist press, and I'm talking about the English newspapers this morning, that Boris Johnson, Michael Gove are planning to utilise some little-known English laws which allow, in certain emergency situations where the security or the safety or the integrity of the United Kingdom is threatened by something, to step in and make laws as they go along without any debate in Parliament and without any new legislation. For example, it would allow them to impose a curfew on ordinary members of the public, where people would not be allowed out of their houses on pain of being shot, basically. That's what a curfew is. And it would be policed by some draconian new force which they could appoint out of whoever they wanted, out of the armed forces, let's say. So they could put troops on the streets, They could take over and commandeer trucks. They could shut roads down so that they could take large convoys of food wherever they wanted to. They could pretty much do what they wanted. And this is exactly the kind of militarisation of the country which everybody, including me, has warned about from the beginning, that as soon as a no-deal Brexit is declared, we will have emergency law declared, military law. Everything is shut down, all normal laws suspended, and I'll bet you any money the first normal laws to be suspended will be devolved powers, because they cannot control the population of the entire United Kingdom when we have devolved administrations basically working and doing those jobs already. So the guarantee is here now. We're seeing it now. The threat is real. It's being articulated by the media. It's being approved by the civil service, and it's being suggested by the Tory politicians as a way to control events after a hard no-deal Brexit, which they themselves are engineering to happen. Now, all the way through the last few years, I've been doing this now for about 4 years, over 807 episodes of this little programme have gone out. And in that time, I've constantly warned about the dangers of what the Tories will do immediately after a crash out of the EU in a no-deal Brexit. And the first thing that will go will be the law. The first thing that goes is always the law, because that's the thing. They need an excuse to suspend normal laws. And the ideal excuse for that is to create an emergency situation. And no-deal Brexit is the perfect storm for this. And that's exactly what is going to happen. So, no matter what happens with Holyrood in 2 years' time, in 2021 when there's a general election, it may be completely moot, because we might by that time be under military diktat in the UK. We might have all of our devolved parliament shut down, completely boarded up, guarded by British troops day and night, and have no choice in the matter. We might be kept in our houses under curfew by the British state, all because they are pursuing the hard no-deal Brexit, which they know is going to destroy not just hundreds of thousands of jobs, but millions of jobs. It's going to impoverish the entire country. And they expect us to riot. And I would expect us to riot as well if that sort of thing was going on. And this is the provocation that they're hoping for. They want us to react badly. They want us to be controlled by the military. It's no longer a scare story. This is a reality now. Their own press is telling you that this is what they're going to do, and we're still sitting here going, "Oh no, it can't be true." It is true. They're doing it now. They're planning it now. It's going to happen. If there's a general election in the autumn, I'll be extremely surprised. Boris Johnson is not going to go. He is going to see Brexit through. He's already pledged that it's going to happen, come what may, come hell or high water. For good or ill, he is taking us out of the EU on the 31st. And notice that there has been no talk at all from either the EU or the British side about entering any early negotiations at all. And the reason, there can't be any negotiations. The European Union has already told the UK they've got a deal. All they have to do is sign it, and it comes into effect, and Britain gets what it asked for, which is the best possible deal given all the preconditions that the British state has put on it. Right at this moment, the country is, as Gordon Brown actually correctly stated, sleepwalking off a cliff at the moment and into a no-deal Brexit. The blame for which is not Scottish nationalism, and it's not Welsh nationalism, and it's not Irish reunification. The reason for this is English exceptionalism. The elite that run the United Kingdom are so wealthy they do not care what happens to the working people of this country. They will destroy their industries. They are happy to become a vassal of the United States and spend the remaining part of the United Kingdom's existence laundering the dirty money of the world's oligarchs and gangsters. And that is how the United Kingdom will be after Brexit, because that's the plan. That is what they are proposing to do. They're going to sell off the NHS. You'll all be paying for your health service, even though you're going to be poor and out of work and have very little food to eat, because there won't be enough, because they'll have taken you out of the market that provides you with the cheap food that you're used to. Food prices will skyrocket, inflation will be high, you'll be poor, and you'll be under the control of the British state. Welcome to Brexit land. I'll see you later. Bye bye.